Welcome, one and all, to the show. We're wired up, fired up, and we are ready to go. BlueTruth, New York Rangers Talk, powered by the Sports Box, episode 22. I am your host, Brian Attard, and thank you for joining me for the next hour or so as we spend some time talking about the only hockey team that matters, and that, my friends, is our New York Rangers. You know, it might be the dog days of summer. I know it has been here in South Jersey where I am. But wherever you're finding this show tonight, please be sure to give a like or a follow to the BlueTruth Facebook page. Follow on Twitter at BlueTruthSB. Subscribe on YouTube. And, you know, who knows, maybe one of these days I'll even get an Instagram going. Whatever all you wonderful people want. We are inching closer and closer to the start of the 2022-2023 season. And we will drop the puck tonight with the obvious news of the week. The Rangers have announced that defenseman Jacob Trouba is the 28th captain in the occasionally illustrious history of the New York Rangers, which means that I'd like to be the first person to congratulate Trouba on winning the 2028 Stanley Cup as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. If you've been waiting for the Rangers to name a captain, to quote Gary Bettman, well, New York, after 54 years, your long wait is over. Trouba is the first Rangers captain since 2018, which was Ryan McDonough before he got traded to Tampa Bay. He had replaced Ryan Callahan, who was also traded to Tampa Bay. A lot has been made about the Rangers not having a captain and having 6 alternates and, you know, how important a captain is. And, you know, I'm not one of those people who think that the team absolutely needed a captain, but I also understand why some people thought that they did. Having said that, as far as Trouba being the captain, my gut instant reaction, my snap judgment, if you will, I hate it. Hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And I'll tell you why. Whether you like Trouba or not, it really doesn't matter. If you are a frequent or even infrequent viewer of the show, you know that moving Jacob Trouba would realistically provide the most cap relief short of moving Artemi Panarin, and I don't think there's a shot in hell they move Artemi Panarin. Trouba signed for 4 more years at $8 million per, with the next 2 having a full no movement clause, and the 2 after that having a modified no trade. You start to look into future years, and, you know, you don't need to be a capologist to realize that, you know, there's going to be a squeeze here. Conventional wisdom in Ranger land, you know, at least the enlightened area of Ranger land, which we're in, was that they would look to move Jacob Trouba when they could, because they have, you know, a plethora of young defensemen who are younger and obviously will cost less. And in a cap world, especially the flat cap world in which we find ourselves, every dollar is vital. Now, this doesn't mean that they can't move him. And, you know, we know this very well, as we just itemized. The last 2 Rangers captains were traded, ironically, to the same team with the same end result for the team they went to, Stanley Cups. You can make the case, actually, that the C on his sweater actually increases the chances that Trouba goes, which is, you know, rather ironic. But here's the issue for me. It's going to be a distraction. When you trade your captain, and I know that I'm getting ahead of myself here, right? I'm not saying, oh, they're going to trade Jacob Trouba. I'm saying that people thought, and I was one of those people, that of the big contracts, Trouba would be the one most likely to go. Now, if they do trade him, it's trading your captain. And while they have done that multiple times in recent history, it doesn't mean that it's not a huge story. Cup contending team, and the Rangers are that now. They are a cup contending team. A cup contender who is trading their captain in what will largely be a salary cap move is a big story. It's a huge story, frankly. So I don't know, guys. I mean, I want to hear from you. Obviously, this is an interactive show. I love the comments and the back and forth. Mark Scotty, I see your comment there. I don't know how they make the numbers work for Trouba to finish his contract here. I don't. I just don't. So based on that, it's now my belief that the Rangers are going to trade their third consecutive captain. I don't see really any way that Trouba finishes the 4 years here. And this is as basic of math as there is, in my opinion. I mean, if they intend to keep as many of these kids as they can, the Lafrenières of the world, the Keandre Millers of the world, et al., I don't see how you can keep an $8 million a year second pair defenseman. So, maybe this captain gets to raise a big silver cup before he goes. And if so, I will be the first person not to care whatsoever after that. You give me a Stanley Cup, I couldn't care less what you do after that. And then the question I'm sure you're going to ask me is, well, Brian, if it wasn't going to be Trouba with the captaincy, who should it have been? Okay. Well, to me, I think either Mika Zibanejad or Chris Kreider would have made sense, would have been obvious choices. They're long-time Rangers. They've been here pre-rebuild, through rebuild, and on the other side. They are both signed longer term, so the money's there, and the term is there. And I really would have been fine with either of them. We talked about this over the summer when there was those contract negotiations with Mika Zibanejad, and the Rangers were in or not in, and in again on Jack Eichel, which was confirmed on one of the what's his name, Vince Mercogliano's podcast. He did confirm they were definitely in on him. I thought, and we talked about this, that it could have been part of those negotiations. Part of the Mika deal was, hey, we'll give you the captaincy as part of signing this long-term deal. And again, I would have been fine with either of them. Clearly, that was not part of those negotiations. And it's not that I'm unhappy by any stretch. There's Mark's comment right there. Crying in the press was a tough look for the first time as captain. Well, I mean, it meant something to him. I appreciate that. It's not that I'm unhappy that it's Trouba on the surface, but I look at it next level and I have some issues with it. But I will say this. I think that there are two very good things about the captain being Jacob Trouba and not someone else. I'll tell you what those two are. So I think number one, it means that in 4 years or less, you can put that C on the jersey of number 23. Adam Fox is going to be the next captain of this team if he wants to be. He's obviously going to be here long after Jacob Trouba is gone. Whether Jacob Trouba lasts the 4 years or not, I don't think he gets re-signed. So he's in it for 4 years, and really their cup window is like 3 years. So we talked about why it looks like they've kind of structured their roster, to be that 5-year window. So it feels like, and I want to hear from you, but it feels like Trouba is a bridge to giving it to Fox longer term. Was my first instinct when it was Trouba. The other thing, and we haven't really seen this here in a while, but to me, and this is how I've noticed this around teams around the league, when you see teams struggling to score, losing streaks, whatever, there's this idea in hockey that the captain should be leading the way offensively. And that if it were a Mika Zibanejad or a Chris Kreider and the team is struggling to score, the captain should lead them out of it. And obviously, Trouba being a defenseman, not a very offensively inclined defenseman these days, that's not ever going to be the case. So I think that is a good thing. Again, I think had it been a Mika or a Kreider, you would get those people that would be like, oh, we got to have Mika score a goal. Kreider has to break it and get out of it. You're not going to get as much of that because they're not wearing the C. I guess to kind of put a bow on this topic, all in all, I'm just concerned that they might move him now that he's captain. They might not move him. I'm sure if we had this show back when Ryan Callahan and Ryan McDonough were in the same boat, I probably would have said the same thing, and I would have been wrong about it. So, maybe my concern is not much of one. Maybe that's just a concern in my head, but we'll see. All in all, the vocal section of our fan base that was clamoring for someone to wear the C, you got one. We'll see if there's 11 alternates next year. A couple of comments coming in here. Victor Romeo, new name to the show. If you have been here before, sir, I thank you for watching. This makes Troops prouder, tougher, and more stable, as Fox will be the next captain. Victor, I agree with your sentiment there. I do think that this sets itself up to give it to Adam Fox when Trouba goes. And at that point, Adam Fox will be in his, Fox right now is 24 years old. So he'll be 28 when Trouba's there at 20, moving on. So I see some of that. So I'm okay with it from that standpoint. Kevin Spacito, very familiar name. No trade contract, no trade clause aside, which contract is easier to trade, Trouba or Kreider? I don't see how both finish their contracts as Rangers. Well, I think what the easier contract is clearly going to be Trouba, because, well, I guess I shouldn't say that, because the last 3 years of Kreider's deal are modified no trade clauses. So I don't know, Kev. I think Trouba's 28, Kreider's 31. The easier deal's probably Trouba to move. I think that you can sell a 31-year-old defenseman a lot easier than you can sell a 33 to 34-year-old forward. Trouba has value, right? So it's not pretend that he's like a bad player by any stretch. But if it were me, to answer your question, I feel as though Trouba would be the easier guy to move. Mark Brown, Drury said, I give you guys 2 years to win the cup. 2 seasons from now, Trouba and Kreider are both going when their contracts become 15-team no trade. Mark, you're not totally wrong on that. I actually think it's a 3-year window. I think that the way that they structured Vincent Trocheck's deal, where he's got a 3-year no move, and then it opens it up after that, it becomes a modified no trade. The way that they signed Shesterkin, he's got 3 years left on his deal. It feels to me like it's a 3-year window that Drury really wants to try to do something with. So I think it's 3, not 2, but I don't think that you're wrong by any stretch that there's a bit of a defined window here that the team is trying to win something in. And I do think that, they will look to move some of these guys in 3 years. Maybe that last year of Trouba's deal might be the one that they try to work their way out of. I could absolutely see that. Kevin, naming Trouba captain almost felt forced by Rangers management. They clearly didn't want to, but I felt it was too obvious to the players who the leader was, and I'm not naming him. The captain was more of an elephant in the room. That's possible. My understanding is this was a player vote, and I hope that's the case. I hope the players were the ones that chose this. Yeah. Look, I mean, both Kreider and Zibanejad played strong leadership roles last year. Kreider was the gatekeeper at the door on and off the ice. I mean, Mika and him obviously have whatever relationship that they have. They're strong friendship. So, and there was a school of thought. I was watching Two Guys, One Cup, Sean Stein and Jonathan Papadie. Those guys are awesome. I love their show. Please, they started to do it live, which I thoroughly enjoy. So if you haven't seen Two Guys, One Cup, check them out. Awesome stuff. That I think it was Jonathan who had said, well, it goes by Rock. I should probably just call him that. Rock says that, maybe it would have caused some friction or something like that. I can see that, but I don't know that really would have come into play. So for me, I don't think that really would have mattered. People can say that. I'm not going to dispute it. I don't know that. To me, I thought Kreider as a manager was a natural choice to get the C. Neither here nor there at this point. Now it's Jacob Trouba's. Kana, my brother, hated trading Callahan, understood McDonough. Well, the problem, Callahan, the reason is because he just wanted money that they thought he wasn't worth. And then he ends up signing in Tampa, where, as you know, there is no state tax, which means that when Tampa offers $6 million, it's not like the Rangers offering $6 million. It's like the Rangers offering $6.5 million, with the cap is flat for both teams. How fair is that? Hint, it's not. But I will also say in both cases, Connor, that I would not have wanted to be the team that signed Ryan Callahan to that deal. Thank God we weren't. Didn't end well for Tampa Bay. They did win a Stanley Cup, though. I also said when they traded Ryan McDonough, I would not want to be the team that gives Ryan McDonough 7 years. The Rangers weren't. He won a couple of cups in Tampa Bay. I'm not disputing that, but they had to move that contract out now. So I feel as though I was vindicated on the fact that I said that both of these contracts will end up as disasters, but I would have taken those disasters to get a couple of Stanley Cups, clearly. So, Trouba will not be traded since his name isn't Ryan. His middle name is Ryan. I found that out today. I saw that on Twitter, and I didn't verify that. And I'm a bad host for not verifying that. It is Jacob Ryan Trouba. What are the odds? Nancy Ward, Brian, thanks for your info. Nancy, thank you for watching. I appreciate you watching. Make sure you give a like to the page. Obviously, we appreciate the kind words there. Hope to see you every so often when we do these things. I love talking Rangers hockey with all of you, and thank you for spending the time with me as well. Kind of said, I guess the Rangers are riding the Trouba train. Well, that's what it's going to be. And like I said, I don't like it. I'm not going to sit here and say I like it, but I don't like it from the standpoint of, some of the cap things that I think about. A lot of people don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to the numbers and the contracts. I'm a numbers guy, so to me it's very important. And I look at some of this stuff. We're going to talk about this in a little bit, but like there's treachery afoot with the cap in this team. I think the salary cap being flat affects this team a lot more than other teams, and it's gonna rear its ugly head sooner than later. Tom Scavetta from our friends over at Review and Preview BA. Let's go Rangers. Tom, it's a pleasure always having you around. And if you're looking for more, again, as you know, we are powered by the Sports Box Network, but Review and Preview are friends of ours who have a similar network as well. Love those guys. Make sure that you're checking their team out as well. Give them a like on their page. You're trying to get their numbers up. I'd like to see them get their numbers up much. Again, I like those guys. So check them out as well. Kevin Callahan couldn't stay healthy. No, but to that point, right? They didn't want to give him that contract. I'm glad they didn't give him that contract. I think we all are. It wasn't a matter. We're going to talk about this in like players, who's going to stay and who's going to go, who we think is going to stay and who's going to go. But when you're dealing in a cap world, you can't fall in love with these guys. Like you have to. It's a business, and you can't overpay for previous production if that next deal is not going to be there. If it's not going to be a productive 5-6 years, you don't need to give them 5 or 6 years just because you love them for what they did before. What have you done for me lately in this business? Garth Patrick, fellow Sports Box host. Hey, Brian, what's up, man? How's it going tonight? Garth, I'm living the dream. We're talking hockey, and it's August 11th because we're Rangers fans. I know you are a Lightning fan. Still a little salty. It's okay. It's all right. FNP Pete, hey, dude, great show. Hey, Pete, thank you for watching, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate get a like on there. It helps us break the Facebook algorithm. So, we appreciate all the love and thank you for spending time with me tonight. So again, Trouba's your captain. I am not in love with it. Maybe that's me. Maybe I'm cynical. Maybe I'm so concerned with the salary cap that I don't see it for what it is. He's a great leader. I'm not disputing any of that. There are some positives to it, but I have my own personal concerns. I do. In other news, Kaapo Kakko signs a 2-year deal with the Rangers, an AAV of $2.1 million. And I think the first question that anybody's going to have is, should the Rangers have offered a longer deal? Well, yeah. And maybe they did. But in order to keep the number lower, Kakko wanted to get out of this deal sooner. That's the give and take with these things. And I know it's counterintuitive, but especially when you're talking about kids like this, they know that their prime earning years are to come. So when he gets that 2-year deal, it's closer to the next time he can sign another one. To his credit, he did sign a 2-year deal, $2.1 million. That's super important, I think, because of the cap crunch that they're in. One thing that we talked about at points throughout the year, especially during the time that Kakko missed with injury, was that, what could this lead to a team-friendly contract? And I think in this case it did. The idea that he hasn't come into his own offensively, that would mean that there wasn't going to be some 7-year, $7 million deal just because he was the second overall pick in the draft, like we've seen with some other guys around the league. So from a financial standpoint and a salary cap standpoint, it is not the worst thing in the world that Kakko hasn't blossomed, because for a team in a cap crunch, having him at $2.1 million is a pretty good thing, in my opinion. I think he's absolutely got his name in some pretty strong pen, maybe not a marker, but some pretty strong pen on that second right wing spot coming out of camp. And I think that if he doesn't get that spot on the second line, very likely with Trocheck and Panarin, I think that there's a couple reasons why that might have happened. Number one, it's because Gerard Gallant wanted to keep him together with Hedl on that third line. They had a lot of chemistry there in the playoffs. Maybe you want to see more and more of that. I can buy that. But maybe Kravtsov just beat him for the spot. Okay, that can happen. Both high picks, both very talented. So, I'm not one of these people, and you know this from watching the show, I'm not one of the people that are concerned about Kakko for a number of reasons. First and foremost being that, I don't know, he's 21 years old. There are guys from his draft class haven't even played yet. So I'm not going to sit here and say, he hasn't scored 30 goals yet. I've said this on the show many times, and if it's repetitive to you, then that means you're listening, and I appreciate that. Kakko was the universal pick at number 2. And the Rangers were always going to take whoever the Devils didn't between Kakko and Jack Hughes. Would I prefer Hughes? Sure. Jack Hughes is a center, and the Rangers needed a center badly enough that they had to go into free agency this year to go get one, because they didn't really have it within their system. In the event Kakko doesn't pan out, which again, I'm not saying is an impossibility, I'm a realistic person, but in the event that he doesn't pan out, guess what? It wasn't the Rangers that got it wrong. It was the whole world that got it wrong. And it is what it is. It is not as if they take some guy that was their bright idea to take high, like, I don't know, Lias Anderson. So if he doesn't pan out, that is not, to me, a slight against the Rangers for taking the absolutely obvious pick. Because if you don't take the obvious pick, and then the obvious pick that you didn't take blows up, you're the idiot, and you will never get a job again. I know NHL likes retreads, but my point is that him busting is not a Ranger problem. It would be a global hockey problem. And I am not predicting that. What I'm saying is that if it were to go that way, that doesn't mean that it was the Rangers who made a poor decision. Hockey made a poor analysis or poor projection on Kaapo Kakko. Comments coming in. Peter. Yes, Peter, brother. How are you, my friend? Good to see you. Pete, from the previous topic, he doesn't matter if he's captain. I need to move him in 2 years. They will once his full no movement clause is modified. No, listen, I agree with you. I'm not saying it can't happen. And again, historically, it actually might be more likely to happen because the Rangers move their captain. So all I'm saying is that it becomes a bigger story. It becomes a bigger distraction when you're moving your captain and you're a cup contending team, which they're going to be for the next little while here at the very least, right? So it's more from that standpoint, Pete. I'm not, again, ironically enough, every captain gets traded, so he's probably going to be the next one in line. Maybe to Tampa Bay, who knows? But I don't like that, me personally. I'm not saying it can't work out. I just have concerns there, but you're not wrong. Kevin, Kakko bet on himself with this deal. He did, but I also think that he didn't have much of a choice. I think he wanted to be here. I never thought that this whole Game 6 conference final benching thing was going to come back to bite them because these kids are still young. I mean, look, you're in the third round of the playoffs. You're trying anything you can do. They had just lost 3 games in a row. Like, you're trying anything to try to turn that tide. So, like, I'm not going to sit here and like lose my mind because Gallant benched him. Young player in that spot. I think too much is made of it, frankly. Mark Brown, next real problem contract will be about whether you pay the guy for his past performance compared to where he will finish next is Ryan Lindgren. And you're 1,000,000% right on that one, Mark, because he's got 2 years left at $3 million. And like the way this roster is kind of constructed, like you've got your big guys, most of which with no movement clauses that you really can't move even if you wanted to. And then like there's not that many guys making money that are tradable. And you look at the roster and the highest paid guy that's movable because it doesn't have the thing is Ryan Lindgren. And it's not that $3 million is a lot of money, but he's somebody who you look at the next contract. Now he's 24, so he'll be 26 or so when that next deal is up. Do you want to give him a long-term deal? And what does that cost you? I love Ryan Lindgren. Ryan Lindgren doesn't give you offensive talent the way the physical stay-at-home defenseman doesn't really make that big money in the league. It's most of the offensive guys like an Adam Fox, like a Cale Makar, like a Roman Josi, like a Victor Hedman, the ones that can score points for you, that get the big money. I don't know what to make of Lindgren, and that's the scary part, I think, is that he's well-loved. I mean, it's not going to be a good day if the Rangers have to move on from him, but look, it's a cap league. You can't just you can't always get what you want. So I agree with you. That is going to be a problem. But there's going to be plenty of problems, and we're going to talk about some of that as we move along. You're not wrong. Connor, I'd rather give a 2-year deal than an 8-year deal that the Devils have Jack Hughes. Well, I would say, Connor, if Kakko is putting up Hughes numbers, you might not be as concerned. Also, Hughes is a center, which they do need longer term. So, look, I'm perfectly fine with it. I think that that's the best thing that could have happened because Kakko hasn't blossomed, is that they were able to offer him that team-friendly deal. And again, production per dollar is crucial in a cap league, especially when you're tight up against it. Peter, they have to find a way to lock up one of these kids long-term so it's a bargain 3 years from now. Well, again, so the two guys, not to get ahead of ourselves, but the 2 guys that need deals next year, Hedel, Zach Jones, Keandre Miller, Lafreniere, nobody else really. So you're going to see something happen there. And we're going to talk about the cap crunch because it is coming. It is coming. Kevin, if he explodes over the next 2 years and far produces contract, they win a cup, he outpriced himself as a Ranger, I'm fine with that. Listen, if you put a gun to my head right now, I don't know that Kakko's here after the next 2 years because he might price himself out. Like this is, we're going to get to some of this, but this is how salary caps work. And when these players are due for big deals and you start looking around the league and saying, Kakko says, hey, this schmuck over in Minnesota is making this much money. And I outproduced him. And this other schmuck in LA is making this much money. And I outproduced him. And this other moron in Carolina is making this much money. And I outproduced him. This is what I want. And if it went to arbitration, he would get it. So it's not a matter of they don't want to pay you. It's they can only pay to this level. Cap's going to be a big thing, guys. If you watch this show, you know I talk about it. Like, listen, I want the Rangers way more than anything in the world. But this is a problem that this team specifically, is definitely going to have to deal with. Connor, I made the point on Two Guys, One Cup. Follow that show. That if Kakko was in the same class as Trevor Zegras, he would be looked at differently. There's truth to that. I mean, look, there are guys who were taken after Kakko who have had more productive to this point NHL careers. I would never dispute any of that. And people mature and develop at their own pace. And let's be honest here. It's not like the Rangers have this wonderful history and track record of cultivating youth. That's why they never did for so long. But I'm not gonna not you personally, right? But nobody else was taking anybody else at 2. It was always going to be 2, 1 or 2. It was always going to be that. They were always going to be that. So again, Peter says KK, will more than pan out. I don't disagree with you, but what I'm saying is if he doesn't, that's not a Ranger problem. Maybe it's a Ranger development problem. I give you that. But everybody in the world wanted Kakko there. There was talk of him going at 1. So I don't want to hear any, the Rangers drafted a bust. All right, 1, the kid's 21. 2, you're an idiot. And 3, everybody wanted the same player. Miller, Kevin Miller is the best left-handed defenseman on the team. FYI, he had a very nice second half of last year. That's exciting. However, paying for that in the next contract is not going to be exciting. Peter would love to lock up Ryan Lindgren for $4 million for 6 years. Yeah, I would do that. I would do that in a heartbeat. And it's funny you bring that up, Peter, because I think that is the kind of deal. Like, they're going to have to give him the term to make up for the fact that the number might not be as high. They're going to have to make that long-term commitment to him to keep the number lower. And I don't think, and that's the other thing too, is, I don't think he wants to go anywhere. So I think if he's happy and you give him a number that he's okay with, or at least a term and a commitment, I think he would do that. But again, as we're going to talk, defensively, they still have a lot of prospects still coming. They're all going to pan out? No, but you have a good number of them to work with. And Peter said, add Miller to that list. Yeah. There is, again, a lot of valid concern financially. I'm the first person to have that concern. Again, if you are watching the show tonight, we are in episode 22 of BlueTruth. Please give a like on the show. Obviously, the more you like and interact with the show, the more Facebook will spread it out there to other Rangers fans and groups that I like to share the show to spread the good news of BlueTruth. So all likes are appreciated. Thank you very much for those who are watching and who are liking. Can't thank you enough for the time that you're spending here. Larry Brooks reports that the Rangers are signing former Devils, Canucks, Maple Leafs, and Sabres forward Jimmy Vesey. I actually forgot he played for this many teams, frankly enough. But here is a Photoshop of what Jimmy Vesey will look like in a Rangers jersey. I'm a pretty good guy at Photoshop, right? Look, the question here, obviously, and as I posted this news to the BlueTruth page, all of the responses were, the hell are they doing that for? Why? 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 Well, look, as I said, production per dollar is important. And this is a clear example of Chris Drury and the Rangers doing their best to maximize the salary cap and provide themselves options. Do I expect Jimmy Vesey to be in the top 9, barring about 3 or 4 injuries? No. This better not be Dryden Hunt 2.0 on the second line, for the love of God. But he is a fine 4th line option, cheap, might even end up in Hartford. I'm not going to get all upset that the Rangers, reportedly, because it hasn't happened yet, that they bring in a guy like this who they're familiar with for $750,000. He might end up in Hartford. It's not a lot of money. When you have the higher end money that the Rangers have allocated, part of the job is to find as much value as you can to fill out your roster as inexpensively as possible, because the cap is the cap and it is what it is. I thought generally the overall response of unhappiness was a little too much. I'm not too worried about this. But I do think, for all intents and purposes, this would slam shut the door of any idea of a return of Tyler Mott. Drury basically confirmed, and the salary cap does that for you too, that the Rangers simply cannot afford to bring back Tyler Mott, even though he might want something in the $2 million a year range. And look, you're going to be like, oh, we're the Rangers, yada. I get it. We have all the money in the world. Trust me, they surcharge it to us for tickets. But at the end of the day, you can't go over the salary cap. So that's a cap casualty. You look back at it now. Was it too smart to give Ryan Reeves 1.75? Is Ryan Reeves the reason you don't have Tyler Mott? You can make that case, and I would probably say that you have there's some truth to that. Some blue truth to that. You like that? But you can't pay fourth line guys that kind of money because it's not realistic. You can't have the high-end talent that they have and then expect to pay money, relatively big money for the spot, right? It's not big money in the grand scheme of things, but it's not even Artemi's making 11.6, right? But it's not for that role. Like, you can't overpay for the role, right? Mark Brown, defense prospects Lundqvist and Jones are both traded maybe before the season starts or at least at the deadline. We're going to bring up both of these names in just a moment, so you sit tight, my friend. Frankie's late to the party, but he's here. What's up, brother? How are you? Welcome in. Kind of, sometimes you just need warm bodies in the fourth line. Yeah, but you're not wrong, but I don't think it's just a warm body. Like, again, I think he can play the fourth line role, right? And but I don't think that this team needs to, over enamor themselves with, we need this guy, that guy, this guy, that guy for the fourth line. It's important, but it's not that important. I'd be focusing more on making sure my third line was set before I worry about my fourth line. They got guys. I mean, look, there's a Ryan Carpenter's of the world, there's Ryan Hunt's of the world, Julian Gautier's of the world, Ryan Reeves, maybe even Barclay Goodrow. Like, you have got, which is our huge disaster contract, neither here nor there. You need players that play roles. What you don't need on the fourth line is elite goal scoring. That's what the other lines are for. People forget that. I think it was Sean McCaffrey who put on Twitter, who I love, by the way. He has some new books coming out. I hope to get him on the show to talk about those books. So if you're out there, Sean, call me maybe. Either call me old school, but I don't think you need 12 scoring forwards and 6 scoring defensemen. So, he's right. He's not wrong. I mean, him and I will have battles over the value of analytics and what analytics really are, and that's okay. He's a good guy. We just have a disagreement, and we will both love the team. But yeah, I mean, he's right. Like, you need guys like what VC can provide to you on that fourth line, bit of energy, a touch of scoring, and I do mean that like a touch. Frankie brings up the potential of Nazem Kadri going to ruin the Islanders. And Frankie, because you watch every show, and I know you do because we talk about it, that I had said a couple of weeks ago that Nazem Kadri was going to be the disaster contract of this offseason. And I am standing by that. So, wouldn't be upset in the world if the Islanders give 7 years to a 32-year-old. Peter, look, whichever way you cut it, we'll lose one of Kakko, Kravtsov, or Hedl. Maybe. I think one of those names, frankly, is becoming more and more likely by the day, which we'll talk about maybe even at the next show. I don't want to necessarily get too far ahead. But you're not wrong. I think we're in the same boat there. Kevin screaming Goodrow as far as overpaying for fourth line. Yeah. My brother, my thoughts. My thoughts. Frankie, when are we trading for Patrick Kane? Deadline at the earliest. They need to. So part of the thing that Vince Mercogliano so eloquently put, which is true, is that when you will go into the season with cap space, that cap space multiplies over the course of the year, so you can take on a bigger contract later. That's why the Rangers need to keep some money available, because you're going to see them move the kids up and down on off days to try to lower their cap throughout the year, to let that multiply and give themselves as much runway as possible later in the year to go trade for a guy like a Patrick Kane, which again is very much on the table. I think there's a good shot of it happening, frankly, if he wants to be here. Mark Brown's comment about Hedl also being traded. We'll talk about that in the coming weeks, the potential for that. Frankie saying 7 years, 7 million for Kadri is that's hysterical. God, I'm sorry. Come on. For a 32-year-old. Guys, imagine that at the end of next year, when Chris Kreider is 32 years old, that the Rangers give him a 7-year deal. I would lose my mind. Nothing to do with Chris Kreider in the short term, but man, the back half of that deal is going to be a disaster. I hope it's the Islanders. Troglodyte fan base. Troglodyte fan base. I want to take a bit of an early look at the roster. We'll get more in depth as the season gets closer. We have all of August, all of September to start talking about some of the projections for what the roster might look like. And the question is, how many open spots are really up for grabs, like really up for grabs? And we all have this romanticization. Humor me. I was looking to use that word a different way. We romanticize this. There you go. Oh, if the kids outperform at camp, like they're going to make the team and, we'll get rid of this guy and that guy. And I said to you last year, there were one or two open spots realistically on the roster. We can have a discussion around the kids and who might make the roster and this and that. But to be real, and we keep it real here, there really aren't that many open spots for competition on this team. We know right now, regardless of what happens at training camp, barring a trade, we know 8 of the top 9 forwards. We know that in some permutation, you are going to see Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, Alexi Lafreniere, Vincent Trocheck, Artemi Panarin, Kaapo Kakko, Filip Chytil, and Vitaly Kravtsov as 8 names in your top 9. And if those 8 names are not in the top 9, I think we have very large problems to delve into. The third left wing is probably earmarked for Sammy Blais. Maybe Barclay Goodrow. And the other one of those two ends up on the fourth line. I would say right now, if I had to handicap it, Blais probably plays third line left wing, which puts Goodrow as your fourth line center or your fourth line wing with a guy like Orion Carpenter, who they brought in, and I guess Reeves or Dryden Hunt, depending on the game. Maybe they alternate, whatever. So, realistically, there's not that many open spots. And, you talk about, I don't think that they would keep a Will Cooley here to play him on the fourth line. I think I'd rather leave him in Hartford for development. I don't think that they would take a Brennan Othman, for example, who's scored a goal in the Canada World Juniors earlier today. I don't think that they would use a Brennan Othman on the fourth line. It's top 9 player, really a top 6 player, that kind of guy. So, I don't think that they're going to, put a wrench into their development, have them play fourth line minutes. So, unless Blais and Goodrow are on the fourth line, which can happen, let's just say it does, that would open up a spot for a Cooley or an Othman to play on a kid line with Vitaly Kravtsov or Kaapo Kakko, depending on the way it breaks down, and Chytil in the middle. So you could see some of that. I think that that's the only realistic way that you see Othman or Cooley make the team, is if they're on that third line left wing and then Blais and Goodrow on the fourth line. The advantage that a Cooley or an Othman have is their cap hit, because it would be low. We love that. When you're getting potential production with a low number, that's wonderful. So, yeah, we like that. That would be probably the only way. But unless that happens, there doesn't appear to be a path. Defensively, we know for sure, no question about it, 5 of the 6 starting defensemen. And it's not Libor Hayek. Stop that. But it's Adam Fox, Ryan Lindgren, Keandre Miller, Jacob Trouba, and Braden Schneider. Braden Schneider's earned a spot on this team. He's not going back. So realistically, there's one spot, and that's the third line left defense spot. So gracefully opened up by Patrick Nemeth. Into the sun. Goodbye. So to me, it's going to be, barring them bringing in a veteran, which I don't think that they do because of financial reasons. So you're looking at a Zach Jones, Nils Lundqvist, or Robertson. So right now, gun to my head, I think it's got to be Zach Jones. And if it's not Zach Jones, then it's probably never going to be Zach Jones. Like, he has to get it now, or it is just not going to happen here. If you cannot put a vice grip on that spot now, after full year in Hartford that you were pissed off about, after getting a cup of coffee in the league the year before in a pandemic year, if you don't earn that spot, kid, you're never going to get it. The last year of his first contract too. So shit or get off the pot, do or die, kid. If you want it, go get it. Go get that spot. Earn your spot on this team. Because if it's not now, I don't think it's ever going to happen. So I've said this before, and I'm going to continue to say it, that this fan base who has fully embraced this rebuild, and we really have, right? We really have, more than I think anybody ever would have expected us to when this letter came out in February of 2018. And look at where we are today, just 4.5 years later. They just went to the conference finals. They completely broke it up and built it up again and got to the third round. So the fans who were patient with the way things went since the letter, there's Glenn and Jeff not here no more. They need to get accustomed to the idea that not all of these kids are going to play here, and arguably not a lot of them will. And that's not the end of the world if it means that they have the ammunition to upgrade where they see fit to upgrade with those pieces. That's fine. But the nature of the salary cap, guaranteed contracts and all, you can't just Wade Redden a guy anymore and put him in the minors. You essentially know what this roster is going to look like. It's going to look a lot like the one that finished off last year, and last year finished off pretty well, all things considered. So some of the comments coming in. Which is the worst 7-year deal, Kevin Hayes or Nazem Kadri? Oh, Kevin Hayes. Kevin Hayes. God, I hate the Flyers. Kevin says 60, third line wing, fourth line's leftovers of said third line competition. Yeah, I think you're right on. And that's okay. It's fine. You don't need elite guys on that fourth line. So you build that third line up. Again, I'm sure you and I could both see a third line of Blais, Hedl, and Kravtsov. I'd be fine with that. Unless you move Blais to the fourth line. Then where's Jimmy Vesey go? Maybe he's what's it called? An in and out guy. I don't know. But they got options. It's fine. Options are fine. Cheap options are great. Peter, I like Goody on the fourth line. Yep. Oh, yeah. Now, what I don't like about Goody in the fourth line is that money. Oh, God. Brooklyn Goodrow's making $3.6 million for the next 5 years. Now, he's a guy who's got a modified no-trade clause. If they could, but they love him. Like, they brought him in for this reason. So it's like, they're going to move him? No, not realistically. Mark Brown, leave Cooley in the AHL. Othman has to go back to juniors. No need to rush them. I agree. But I'll tell you, though, Mark, like I said, like, I'm not opposed, and I don't think you would be either. I'm not opposed to, if Cooley's earned that spot, give it to him. Give it to him. At least for 10, give it to him. Figure it out later. If he's a guy who can play that role on a kid line again, because Lafreniere's on the Lafreniere's top 6. That's over. But create that kid line, whether it's Kakko or Kravtsov, both qualify. I'm okay with that. Othman, I think they're going to be a little bit more like he's more of a physical type player. Like Othman's got a bomb of a shot. I'm really excited about him longer term, and I wasn't at the draft, truth be told. I wanted a center. Shocking. Cooley's got a shot. I think if I had to handicap it, Cooley's got the best shot among the forwards. I would think. But we'll see. We're nowhere near there yet, but I really want to see these kids in preseason and see what they do. Peter, yes, Cooley Othman, not fourth line players. I can see third line left wing. We think alike a lot of times. Well, thank you. That means that not only I'm right, but you're right too, right? So, yeah, I just like that makes sense to me. Like, I don't think you rush someone, but if they earn it, I'll say this, Peter. I think like if Cooley earns it and he doesn't get it, you could Zach Jones that kid, because I thought Zach Jones earned a spot last year and they gave it to Patrick Nemeth just because they signed Patrick Nemeth. So, like that, I wasn't a huge fan of. He'd like to see Robertson, but it will be Jones. I think it's got to be Jones. And Mark Brown again. Jones makes the most sense, but the Rangers will want Robertson. Jones gets you the most return in a trade, and that's very possible. And I think that what you're going to start to see here is, again, when I talk about, not all these guys are going to make the roster at any given point. You look at the contracts that are there. Do you think they're going to put Panarin in the minors? No. I mean, but you don't understand what I'm saying. Like, these guys are locked in. It's not necessarily an open competition the way we all like to see. We know for the most part what the roster is, and the roster had a good year last year. Kevin says he's being sarcastic. The Krasnov goes back to Rush after opening night. VC starts in the top 9 over him. No, you know what? I think the nature of the contract, Kevin, sorry. The nature of the contract that they gave him is that, by the way, follow the instruction. Thank you. The nature of the contract was he's going to make the team. They're not going to put him back down through waivers again. And again, I am not of the belief that he is only here to showcase and get moved. Like, I think they genuinely want him to be a long-term piece. Kid's got so much talent. He really does. So I think if you can get good production from a talented kid like that, a low number, all day, baby, all day. So that plays into it too. Because the trade's got to make sense. Now, if they trade for a guy like Patrick Kane, I got to tell you, I think Kakko or Krasnov are in that deal. I don't think there's a way out. There's a way that they're not. You got to play somewhere. So if he's on Panarin's other wing with Trocheck, then Kakko or Krasnov in the third line, and Kakko or Krasnov's out the door as part of that deal. And I think you need to mentally prepare yourself for that. And if it's Krasnov, I don't think most people would be as upset. People get really upset if it's Kakko, I think. And it absolutely could be. Absolutely could be. But I don't know. But like I said, we have a really good feel for what this roster is going to be. We'll talk about lines and stuff and that in the coming weeks, as we get closer and closer to preseason, which will be fun. But right now, like I said, I think the people that think there's going to be open competition here are going to be, very underwhelmed. Talking about Cooley, 6'4", 200. I like that. Yeah. Size. They need size. Kraft with Brad can very well turn him into a scorer. Kid has talent. Well, yeah, we're going to talk about those wingers a little bit in the coming weeks too, like who fits best where. And it's not always there's a likely scenario. And then there's think of it this way type thing. You're getting ahead of me, Peter, which I like, but we got to keep some content for future weeks, right? In case you haven't seen it yet, we here at BlueTruth are trying to do a little something fun. September the 4th. Takeover. We want to take over the internet. September 4th will be Rangers Fan Day on social media. And I'll put this up again. Everyone, use hashtag NYR Takeover. Post pictures in Rangers gear. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Let's paint the internet red, white, and blue. Let's take over the internet. So, I want to start this as something annual. It's 9-4 for obvious reasons. And I ask all of you to post pictures of yourself, your family, your friends, your pets with the hashtag NYR Takeover, hats, shirts, jerseys, whatever. Let's get it trending. Let's take over social media and remind all of those other peasant fan bases that the Rangers fan base is the preeminent fan base in the NHL. We are ready for this upcoming season, and their team sucks, and they suck for rooting for that team. Get your family and friends involved. Let's all take over social media. September the 4th, hashtag NYR Takeover. I'll put it up one more time because I like the graphic. Are you in? Let's have some fun. September the 4th, NYR Takeover. Next show, tentatively, because I'm sure some like major news might break. Looking at like Thursday night, September the 1st, because there's not going to be a lot of stuff going on here in the coming weeks. I have a little small vacation coming up, so I figure we'll take the next 2 weeks off to come back on September the 1st. Nice and refreshed. At that point, we'll hopefully start to see a little bit of the break in this heat because my gosh, I can't wait to see my air conditioner. It is a solid 68 degrees in my house all the time. Whatever it costs, I got to deal with it. I can't be uncomfortable in my own home. So that's going to be a fun electric bill. But right now we'll be looking at 9-1 for the next show. Again, if you are watching for the first time or if you're a longtime viewer, please give a like on the show. And if you haven't yet, I would obviously appreciate you giving a like to the Facebook page, to follow me on Twitter at BlueTruth SB. You're getting to the end right now, right? Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We always put replays of the show on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube and you want to be part of the live show, get your comments in, catch us live when we do that. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the time that you guys spend with me talking about my favorite topic in the world to talk about, and that is our New York Rangers. It is getting closer and closer to the start of the season. Kevin, thank you. I do this for you guys because it's fun. This is cathartic for me. Time flies on this show. And I always say this every week, and it rings true. I prepare like notes on what I want to talk about and the topics I want to touch on. And I always like, man, I hope I fill an hour with this because I'm a fast talker. Always does. Because it's wonderful. You guys interact. You bring the strong comments, strong thoughts. This is not one of those, shows where, people just throw up a whole bunch of nonsense. I think the people that the viewership that we've built and the community that we've built around this show is smart Ranger fans. And I appreciate the hell out of that. Peter, thank you. Thank you. And Mark, yes, thank you. Thank you for watching the show tonight. So like I said, we will catch together again on September the 1st, where I will definitely be reminding you that 9-4 is Rangers Takeover Day. But for episode 22 of Blue Truth, powered by the Sports Box, I am Brian Attard. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you in a couple of weeks. And as always, let's go Rangers.